Greetings and welcome to the Void. I'm Anexor, and today I'll be your spiritual guide as we investigate 5 signs of a spiritual awakening. Now, what is a spiritual awakening? Basically, it's like seeing that the world you thought was there is completely different, that things you thought were impossible are actually possible, and that things you never even considered or even imagined are just normal, everyday occurrences that have been happening around you, but you just haven't been paying attention to them, you haven't been attuned to them, you haven't been aware of them. And now that awareness, that attention, that tuning is increasing, and now you're starting to see things a little differently. And with that, it's like realizing that life is a dream and you're becoming lucid, you're becoming awake in this dream. So that's kind of what spiritual awakening is in a nutshell. So today we're going to look at 5 signs that you are going through this, or that you are beginning this process. Little things that you can pay attention to that are going to kind of help you stay on track as you go through this. As the entire planet of millions of people are going through this all over the place. I started my own about 7 years ago, and it's been a heck of a ride. So I'll just give you a few tips here that are gonna definitely help you out. So number 1 is you're watching this video. Now, I know that might sound kind of silly, but honestly, there's millions of things you could be doing instead. There's all kinds of media you could be watching, songs you could be listening to, you could be out playing sports or whatever it is. Out there in the world, there's so many things for you to be doing, and for you to be putting all your attention on this right now is indicative of you having a vibrational attraction to this type of information coming to you at this time in your life, this moment actually. And everything is, every nose picking, every butt scratching, like everything that's ever happened is intentional, is purposeful. So you watching this is not a mistake, okay? But really, what number 1 is synchronicity, and this is part of it. So you may have been getting information like this recently. You may have been exposed to ideas like this, recently, and this is just another way the universe is coming at you, trying to get you to wake up, a little bit more than you have been, and hopefully that this is going to be a medium that you're going to be more receptive to than other mediums that share the same message just in a different way that maybe doesn't rub you quite as well, but maybe you'll be more open to it this way. So there are other synchronicities, and they could be the lyrics in a song that just time up with what you're thinking at a specific moment, or the numbers on a clock, 1111 or 333. These are known as master numbers. These are numbers that are common among a lot of people. They're kind of like general numbers, but you can have your own specific experience with life as long as you begin to pay attention to this. You see, like, you can set up agreements with the universe for things that can line up with you. Like, for example, I was actually in the shower thinking of what I was going to say here, and I was like, yeah, as you start to pay attention and you make these agreements that, when I see this, I'm going to interpret it this way. Like when I see 1111, I'm going to interpret it as a sign from the universe. Okay, I'm on my path, I'm awakening, like things are going well. It starts to turn it up. And right when I was thinking it starts to turn it up, I was actually already reaching back to turn up the heat in my shower. And I just thought that was hilarious. Because it's just so pervasive now in my everyday life. I don't really pay attention to it too much, honestly, anymore. I used to be like really, scanning for it. But now it's just like a skill that I have. So I advise you, not to say that you shouldn't pay attention. You should definitely pay attention at first, but after a while you start to realize that everything is just amazing. Everything's a sign, everything's out there, the same way that there's every music stations out there playing, but you're not listening to them right now because you're not tuned into them, but they're out there in the soup of the radio waves going around. So in the same way, all the messages, all the knowledge, all the information, everything is surrounding you at this time. And it's just your ability to perceive it. It's your ability to be aware of it. These kinds of things have kind of like surrounded you, throughout your life, and you may have not even noticed it. I remember when I first started waking up, I remembered the System of a Down song I used to listen to. I think it's Ariel's, and he says, "Life is a waterfall. We're one in the river and one again after the fall." And it's just like a cool lyric, back then, but now with my broader perspective of how life works, it's like, wow, like all these teachings, all this information, all this awareness, all this perception was around me this whole time. I just wasn't paying attention to it. I just didn't have the context to understand it. So definitely pay attention to these little synchronicities, these little things that are happening. You're not going crazy. You're just becoming more aware of what's happening, and you're becoming more sensitive to things. And that brings me into number 2, is a heightened state of energetic sensitivity. So this is like certain music you're just not into anymore. That group of friends, just not so much. Or this activity, I'm not really into that anymore. This type of food, just not quite that. It's kind of like a Princess and the Pea kind of situation where you're just not really sure why, but you're just not really into things anymore that you used to be. You're starting to feel kind of this like you're starting to feel a sensitivity to certain things, and you're just naturally, intuitively shifting away from them and adopting new patterns in your lifestyle, whether it's your diet, your friends, relationships, or your sleep patterns, or what you like to do for fun, or what the type of music you're listening to. Different things are shifting and changing for you as you become more energetically sensitive, and you might find things that normally may not have bothered you, may bother you now, and things that used to bother you don't bother you anymore. It's kind of like this kind of shift in your perspective, in your experience. So that's another thing to look out for. Number 3, I put an interest in ETs, or extraterrestrials, or ascended masters, or angels, or just any kind of like broader paradigm, of interaction with other beings throughout the cosmos, and realizing that everything in the universe is you, realizing that everything in the universe is one with you, realizing that everything is alive, even the rocks, even the particles of dust on the wall, like everything is a part of life, everything is a part of you, everything has consciousness flowing through it to some degree. And you may be feeling, a sense of contact with some of these forces, some of these ETs or ascended masters or whatever, what have you, that are, trying to help you. Maybe your spirit guides, trying to help you, wake up, trying to help kind of poke and prod you a little bit and see what you like to pay attention to, see what things kind of get your interest to help, speed this process up, because we're kind of in like a quickening phase where it's like, all right, let's drop the old and, start with the new, and to kind of shift that direction where you gotta put in some work to accelerate in the other direction, to build a new momentum in that direction that's gonna last, throughout the new age, as, humanity progresses on and begins to wake up as a whole. So maybe you've seen people talking about this, or you've seen, videos are popping up in your feed about ascended masters or ETs or spirit guides, or, things like that. Or maybe you just suddenly become more interested in them. Maybe you've had some weird dreams recently where you've had some interesting experiences. I know I had this weird dream of like water and like almost like fish something, and it was just like fresh and nice, and the word Zarathustra just popped into my head. And this was like in my kind of half asleep state just before I woke up, and I was like, huh. And I've been going through this process for like 7 years, and this isn't something that's too common for me to experience. So I thought it was really interesting, and I've been waiting for things like this to happen. So I looked it up, and it's actually the ascended master uh, who was associated with the old religion of Zoroastrianism. And I thought that was interesting, that just kind of popped into my head. So it's just like one little, poke and prod from ascended masters or ETs or whatever, to kind of help you navigate your experience. So just pay attention to little things like that. You may be experiencing something like that. Maybe you haven't. Maybe it's something that's going to be happening in the future. Now that you've been exposed to it, maybe something might happen in the near future. And when it does, now you'll have the ability to recognize it since you've been exposed to it. Number 4, I put a radical shift in your worldview. So this is like realizing how social constructs and psychological programs and paradigms have been put together to shape your perception like a lens and to make you see the world in a certain way. But now that you've gotten like this step back, you can actually see the framework of that paradigm, and you're like, wow, like I've been conditioned to believe this about certain people, certain individuals. I've been conditioned to think about my nationality or my ethnicity or my gender or products or consumerism, just like different little things that you've been slowly, carefully kind of navigated towards or programmed kind of over time through social conditioning. I'd say conditioned over time to see the world a certain way, and you begin to understand that that's just a choice, and that you can see the world a different way. You can see a world without borders. You can see that you're just a human being, that everyone's just energy, everyone's all just different expressions of the one source, the universe, and you begin to be woken up to some of the darker aspects of what has been going on in the world, and how some of the things you've been participating in are affecting other people. And you can kind of see how the choices you make on a day-to-day basis have a ripple effect, have an impact on the rest of the world around you and the universe at large. So that's another thing to look out for if you've been looking into like conspiracy theories or watching like crazy videos or documentaries, or just like questioning society, or having these kinds of little bits of information coming in insights into kind of the established norm or the establishment, and just being woken up to see them from another perspective and to realize what's been going on. And not to say that any of that stuff is inherently wrong or bad or any of that. Do whatever you want, but that's what it's all about, is to realize that it's about doing what you want rather than what someone else has told you or whatever everyone else wants you to believe. Is looking at the facts, looking at what is happening, and then having an expanded view of what's possible, and then being able to make decisions for yourself as to what you want to do and what you want your life to be like. So I hope that was helpful. And then number 5, I put an empathic shift, and kind of understanding the mirroring of the universe. And you may be familiar with the law of attraction. If not, look into it. It's really awesome. But in a nutshell, it's basically that the universe is a mirror, and what you put out is what you get back. Basically. like no exceptions to this, right? Like literally everything that's happening in your experience, you're creating intentionally, purposefully, right? You just may not understand how you're doing it because your awareness itself is something that's malleable. Like we've been talking about this whole time. You're in a dream, you're asleep, you don't know that you're making the dream, you're just experiencing the dream, and then you wake up, you start to get lucid in the dream, and it's like, oh, I can do this, I can change that. Why? That doesn't make sense. And then you can start to reform things the way you want them to be. Um, and why I said empathic shift is because it's with this increased energetic sensitivity, you kind of have this increase in empathy when you start to realize that the entire universe is you, that everyone is you. And it's like, wow, how am I treating, myself? How am I treating everyone else? Am I spreading, distaste and discontent, or am I spreading love and compassion and understanding? And not to say that you have to try to hold yourself to some idealistic standard that's unrealistic, just to set the intention of being more loving and more compassionate in every moment in of itself is enough, and realizing that you are enough, that you're fine right now, that you are eternal, that you are the universe, you don't have anything to do, you have no obligations, everything for you is a choice, like, and that the way you treat yourself is the way that you're going to be treated, because you are the only thing that exists. So be nicer to yourself if you want. If you don't have to, you can do whatever you want. It's just, coming to that awareness, coming to that realization, and seeing that, one path you could take is seeing that everything that, ever happens that you may consider negative is just an opportunity for you to become aware of a situation that you may want to change. A situation or an aspect of yourself that just needs more love, compassion, attention, empathy, and awareness, So, with that being said, I hope that you guys enjoyed my 5 signs of spiritual awakening. Hopefully you guys will be able to use those along your process and definitely accelerate the process and not go through some of the shaky stuff that I went through when I first started. And just remember that no matter how dark it gets or crazy or weird, anything's possible. Absolutely anything you can imagine is possible, and you are the light of consciousness. There really is no darkness. It's just brighter light, dimmer light. All is love, all is light. Stay blessed.